Okay. You're back right here on the Gill Connections podcast. Quick segue. I like to just make sure I point this out to everybody. I hope you enjoy our intro music. And if you want the full song, it actually is at the end of this episode. And the reason I want to point out, because first of all, I think it's awesome. I love that style of music, but it was written, produced, edited, designed, the whole shebang by a track coach, by one of you guys and gals that are out there. So just so blessed that Udon Cheek from East Carolina University would do that custom music just for us for here in the podcast. I'm grateful for him. And I think it's so cool that it was a track coach that did it as well. So if you haven't ever heard the whole song, lyrics and everything, at the end of this episode, I play the whole thing. And again, Udon, you're just so talented. Check him out. He actually has songs on Spotify right now as well. I'm Free, which is a banger. I love it. So thank you, Udon. Appreciate you. Today, this is a lot of fun. I actually, and maybe we'll get into it a little bit, but he'll know what what I mean when I say this. I actually wish he wasn't here today, but he is here, and I'm glad he is. Yeah, you know what I mean. We're gonna do this. Is another awesome high school coach. I'm super pumped to learn his journey. Help me welcome from Hearne. Am I pronouncing that right? I meant to check. Hearne, right? Hearne.
Correct. Yes, sir.
Hearne, Texas. The Eagles, if I remember correctly. The wise, the wonderful, Mr. Lewis Edmonson. Lewis, how are you, my friend?
Pretty good. How's it going?
Yeah, you know what I meant when I said I kind of wish you were here. Yeah, okay, good.
Definitely.
Yeah. Everybody else listening is like, well, man, that's kind of rude, Mike. But no, I always wish only the best for you, and you're going through it a little bit here, but I'm
Yes,
pumped
sir.
that you are here and excited for you, my friend.
Yes, sir. Happy to be here.
Lewis, before we jump in our Wayback Machine and kind of learn where track and stuff starts with me, one of the reasons that draws me to a guy like you to have you here at the show, you have, and maybe we'll learn maybe what the influence is, whether it came from a person or came from an event or people or the sport, but you're a leader, my friend. And what I mean by that is every track clinic that I go to that's in your area, Texas and
Yes,
things
sir.
like that, man, you are there, not just there, you're there at the forefront. You're listening, you're taking notes, you're asking questions, like you are involved in those. And you even do things outside, like you're kind of like a bringer together type of person. You're
Yeah.
always like, hey, where can we all get together? Coaches are special and we need to celebrate each other. So where can we all get together and hang out and not have the stress of what's going on the track and all that stuff? That has always just been so impressive to me because you don't have to do
Thanks.
it. You know what I'm saying? Where can before we get into your story, was there ever an impetus to that, a fire that started that, or is that just your natural personality?
Um, Pretty much that's my personality, man. I just enjoy people having a good time.
Yeah.
Especially with coaches, we have so much work to do throughout the year. You got three sport coaches that never have time, and then that little time that you do have, you have to spend that with your family
Yeah.
first and foremost, away from what sports we coach. But then when you finally get that time when coaches are together and we get to relax and let your hair down, as they say, I think you should have a good time. So I'm always I'll be that guy. I mean, to try to get togetherness, amongst coaches because when
Yeah.
we see each other, we're working.
Yeah.
We're competing,
Right.
we're battling, and
Yeah.
then you don't get to know people,
Yeah.
who they are, their personality characteristics, what they believe in,
That's a good
or
point.
even I think the biggest thing about the social events that we get to take part in is that you finally get to tell a person besides the social media, man, congratulations on that
Yeah.
award or that season or that journey, man, in person. And I think it means
Yeah.
more. People say all the time, you can text me, but it means more if you can tell me.
Yeah. Sure.
And I
Absolutely.
think that's a big thing when we get together. And I think that's one of the biggest things that draws me to do those things.
Yeah. I, I think, I bet we find somewhere in your story, you and I are a lot alike in the sense of, I think you have a huge heart for those people who choose to become coaches. and,
Yes, sir.
and that is, like I always say, there's no bigger advocate for track and field coaches than me. And I bet you through your story, we're going to find that you have always kind of lifted up people who become coaches in your life and mentors and what they've meant to you. So I'm excited to find
Sure.
out more about that. All right, well let's do it. Let's get into our Wayback Machine here. Lewis, assuming, and I already know this actually, so it's not an assumption that you are an athlete somewhere. Track had to start for you. Where does track and field start for you?
So track and field started for me as a young kid growing up. My dad, he was a track star out of Houston. He went to Cashmere High School in Houston, and I got to diving into things around the house, like his memory books and whatnot of what he did, what he achieved and whatnot, and kind of just took a personal page from his book, just watching what he did, seeing the awards, seeing the medals and whatnot, and kind of as a kid we see these things and we want to know, where did that come from? What is this? Not knowing exactly how detrimental it was to achieve those things, and my dad kind of introduced me to it, running summer track as a kid. He was my coach and whatnot, and we had a lot of fun. And I just, man, it was nothing greater than competing and being faster than the next guy, and in summer track you get to do so many different events. You get to play with high jump, long jump, 100, 200, and that's kind of where it started, man. My dad, was one of those guys that he's a true competitor just like me, and we started out, as a young kid racing in the street. It was a big deal. I could never beat my dad. And then you get older, and you're older, and then you get a little closer, and then you beat your dad.
Yeah.
And that's when that competitive edge started, man. If I can beat my dad, I can beat anybody.
So dad wasn't one of those guys who was like, oh, I'm gonna let my son win. He was like, you're gonna beat me because you're faster.
No way was he giving away a
love
win.
that. Was he like that with like growing up, my kids, when they were little, I wanted them to learn like cards and the value of money and things like that. So we used to play heads up Uno all the time.
Right.
And never, there was no taking, if they didn't understand a rule, or if they'd forgotten a rule, we explained, I'm sorry, that's your job to remember.
Yeah.
Exactly. And then we started playing for pennies, and the same thing. It was like, man,
right.
I'm taking your money. I wanted them to learn that if you go play cards, I was a professional poker player, so I have this like I don't necessarily want them to play cards, but I want them to understand, like, hey, if you get into a game where you choose to play for money, you're playing for money. There's no give backs. There's no if you lose. So I was like, so I love that. Dad was like, no, man, you playing me, you're gonna win because you win. Yeah, that's cool. How was it like? So dad coached you in summer club up to a certain point, maybe all the way through. We'll find out. How was that? I'm always interested when dads coach their kids, because coaches, when they coach kids, when practice is over, you go to your home, coach goes to their home. How was it like, being on the track, and had to be some hard times, and when I mean hard times, like workouts that you didn't do well or didn't want to do, but
right.
then you went home and sat at the dinner table with coach / dad as well. How was that experience?
So that experience was real good, man. As as I've gotten older, I value that even more with the coaching and the things that I do with kids and how I coach them, because my dad was one of the guys that he allowed the coaches to coach me. It wasn't a sit in the stands and yell and dictate what the coaches did and what they're saying and how they're coaching you and the workouts and whatnot. But as we got home, like you say, in the living room over the dinner table, it was like, well, how was the workouts? Did you feel it was effective, or did you give 100%? Or it was just questions to make sure that we are applying ourselves. It wasn't ever your coach don't know this and I don't see it. No, it was never that. It was just like, make sure you're giving it 100%. And he supported my coaches as well, because it was his time to step back and allow my coaches to coach. So that was something that I see now. It's greatly appreciated, because everybody has a view and a point of view of everything that but if you support it and do it in the right way, they mesh in the middle.
What a great lesson on a parent-child relationship there, for the parent to ask questions. That's when I heard that, I was like, oh, that instead of, like you said, instead of dictating, of like, well, why doesn't your coach do this? And your coach should have done this. It's like, oh, so how was it? How did you feel? What did you try your best? I think that's a great lesson for parent-child relationships there.
Sure.
That's cool. Okay, get us to high school. I know you coach football now. Tell us about high school. Were you a football player, track athlete? What all did you do in high school?
Yes, sir. I was a 3-sport guy. Well, 4-sport. I tried baseball, but we get into that later. But yes, football and basketball and track. Football was good, man. It was one of those things for me that I enjoyed it. Very competitive, very hardworking. In a smaller country town in Caldwell, football was big. It was big for us. Everybody played it. That was just something that the town did. Everybody played it from junior high on up to high school. So we always had all our buddies out there. So it was never a tug of war issue about if you wanted to be out there or not, because we were so close knit as friends that we always wanted to support each other, and we were there. We played well together because we did it since 7th grade. And I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. It wasn't until after I got out of high school that, you look back and you say, I probably should have focused on this a little bit more because track wasn't the first love. It was basketball. I enjoyed basketball like crazy. That was something that those were the camps I was going to. I remember it was a Don Eddy basketball camp that was really, really big. And when I was in high school, and it taught you the fundamentals of shooting free throws and your shot and layups and things like that. To be better at your game. Yeah. And I dug into basketball like crazy. And then, when track season rolls around, I happened to be, just a little faster than everybody else. So it was basketball first and then track. But yeah, I played all sports.
A lot of times I'll ask a football track athlete, like, so what were you? Were you a football player who ran track, or were you a track athlete who played football? But you were a basketball player. That was your identity first and foremost. What was it? I'm always interested. And maybe actually, I don't know if you coach basketball or not. We'll get to that later on. But you're on a track and field podcast, so track won out in the sense of like, I know you as a track coach.
Yes, sir.
But what was it during high school? I'm always interested, in our identity as a 14, 18-year-old kid. What was it about basketball that was the top over track and football even? Like basketball was number one. What was it about that sport, or maybe it was the coach or the culture? What was it about basketball that won you over, at least back then?
So we were all, as friends, we were competitive in basketball more than anything out there. Just since we put it in, the way that we're putting it now, what won me over, it falls over in how, I coach it now and how I get kids out there. So basketball was something that was, that was the Michael Jordan era for me and my friends. So we all wanted to be like Mike. It was so many good players back there, but Michael Jordan was the one. So, that was one thing when we saw so many great things in basketball that we wanted to do those same things, have those, those same moves, right, that same shot, that same dunk eventually when you got there. But basketball and football and track, the thing that won me over is like I tell them now, I want you to, come out to track because you want to be there. Mm-hmm. Come to track because that's something that, you put it into a competitive form, and that's going to make you better. If football is your sport, there are no more slow football players. Right. So get what you get out of track. I'll be happy to give that to you. But we have an understanding. But at the end of the day, for me in high school, track was just running, and a lot of people see, and I explain it to a lot of kids when I have our first meeting at the beginning of the year, in football, when you have to run at the end of practice, it's either conditioning or it's a punishment.
Right.
Basketball, it's either condition or it's a punishment. Yeah. Nobody wants to come to track at the end of the year and just run again because you enjoy it.
That's a good point.
So, that's how, that's what our mindset was. And that's how I explain it to our kids now. It's not going to be a punishment. It's going to be your training when you get to track at the end of the year. So that's what it was for me and my mindset, that when I was in high school, I was like, man, look, man, because I was that kid. I was going to get in trouble. I was punished a lot of running, and then now I got to go to track and run for fun. Yeah, nah, you can't convince me on that one. So
that's funny because I think we get very it's just human nature. We get very myopic, very in our box, and so as track coaches, I think maybe we for those of us who are just track, only coaching track and field, that we sometimes forget, these. And hopefully there's more and more multi-sport athletes. But yeah, when it's football, it's either conditioning or you're in trouble. Basketball, it's you're in trouble. Yeah. And then you get to track, and it's at the end of the whole school year, and it's like, you know what? I have done enough running, coach. I don't want to come to track and just go do more running. That's a good point. Where I grew up in a small town, Alabama. All of our football coaches were all of our other sport coaches. Right. You kind of grew up in a small town. Were all your football coaches the rest of the sport coaches there?
Yes, sir. Very much so. So my football receiver coach was my head track coach. So I got to be with him a whole lot, and the same push was very detrimental to my performance because I'd been with him all year. Sometimes he would end up being a JV coach, but more football and track. So that that same coach and motivator was with me pretty much all year. So
Okay.
yeah.
So what was your relationship like with your coaches?
Man, my coaches were good. I had one particular coach that was. I had a bunch of good coaches in high school. They were pretty good at teaching on and off. That's one thing that I picked up that I carry on to what I do. But one coach, Coach Happy Skabanik, was my big mentor in high school. Man, he was a family guy. He was really, really close to my family. So he was one of those guys on and off, the court and inside of the school. It was going to be do right, period. That's just what we're going to do. We're going to work hard. We're going to do right. And he was a great motivator. And he wasn't the deep dive in technical coach back then, but the way he motivated me, man, I would run through a wall for that guy. That's just how he pushed me because I knew where it came from.
Yeah,
I knew it was a good place, and I could feel it. And it was an everyday thing from him. In the hallways, if I was, getting in trouble in class, or late to class, it'd be a hallway thing, or it'd be a cafeteria thing, or it'd be, you got to ride home. Let's get your parents on the phone. It was always something that was making me be better. And that's the thing that I appreciate about my coaches. That's the same thing I try to do now. You got to be an on and off the field type of coach to get these kids to do something for, do these things for you. And that just comes from relationship building. That's one of the biggest things that I took from the coaches that I had. I appreciated that so much. And I would do more for the coaches that I had the better relationships for. Not that I wouldn't do anything for all my coaches, but it just meant more.
Yeah.
Coming from those coaches.
That's a good lesson for us because I can't imagine anybody gets into teaching or coaching that doesn't care about the kids in some form or fashion. And we all have, different definitions of what that means and styles of what that means. Some people may think like, hey, I would never give a kid a ride after a practice because, there's other implications and that shows that I care. And they're right. I get that. And there's others that would, they'll be the taxi for all their team, taking them home for the whole night. What was it, about that coach and some of the other coaches that you had good relationships with that you were so motivated to do better and be better for? What was it about their style? And maybe you can think of like a specific example that one of them did or he specifically did that you were like, oh, this, like I kind of want to be like this guy, like, or I at least want to be around this guy, this coach.
Well, it's the same coach. My coach Krabonic was the same guy with everybody. He built relationships with everybody. It was always a push for everybody, and everybody felt the same about him. Even coming into the high school, my sister was 2 years older than me, so he was her track coach as well, shot put coach, and she had a love-hate relationship for him, but she loved him to death. He was just, he was one of the biggest things that the example that I would give is like I say now, if you beat them down, build them up. And he was that coach. When he would get on me, I would swear this guy hated every bone in my body. But then when I did exactly what he was teaching me, he was the first guy there to congratulate me. Or if it didn't go as well as I wanted it to go, he was the first guy there to tell me, okay, you if you gave your best, then there's nothing more than you could do. I remember going to the state championship and I had ran some great races all that year. And I ran my worst race at the state championship. And I just remember him being there. You come around there, you're dragging your feet and your head's down. And he was the first one there. And he was like, look, man, you're not going to always win, but you are here.
Wow.
You're one of those guys that made it. You look across the stands and you on the track. How many people watch that race, that you beat out to get here. And it was just something about him that it's the consistency more than anything that made me, do anything for this guy or just respect him so much.
I recently had it put in words, kind of that same thing, but here in the business side, management side of, when someone makes a mistake, you correct the role. So, for here, the salesperson, the sales consultant, this is where we made a mistake and this is where we need to do better, blah, 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 blah. And when they do something good, when there's a positive, you give the attribute to the person, like, oh, Lewis, you did such a great job with this customer, blah, 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 blah. So you correct the role, you uplift the individual. And I just thought, like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. Like, okay, it's not you. You were still awesome. You made this mistake and we need to correct it and move on. But you're still awesome. Like, you always got to keep that eye, that individual high. That's cool. I like that. And where does you mentioned baseball? Where does baseball play into all of this?
Oh, good God. So me being one of the faster guys on the campus, my baseball coach convinced me to come out and play baseball. So I told him, I said, dude, I'm not going to stand there and let a guy throw a ball at me as fast as he can. And
no protection.
If it's a hair off, then I'm going to get hit. So, and I said, then I'm not going to look like a fool out there. I'm already scared of it. So I'm going to dodge it. I'm not going to stand in that batter's box and allow this to happen. So he said, okay, well, we'll just put you on pinch run then. When he gets on base, you'll go run.
Okay.
I said, okay, that deal. So I got in there and I first two bases I did good, and then I remember my last player of being a baseball player. I went to I stole third base, and that catcher threw that bad boy down the pipeline as fast as he could, and it missed me by about that much,
dude.
And I stole and got home, and then so at that point in time in Caldwell, we would have the Caldwell relays and the Caldwell baseball tournament. So after I got in, I scored. I got in. I said, Coach, I appreciate you.
No,
but I am done playing baseball. He says, I didn't think it was going to be long anyway, but I appreciate you. And I went, and our high school, we have a hill that goes down to the track. I went right down the hill, got to the locker room, put my track uniform on, and that was the end of my baseball career.
Hey, I love that you tried it though, right?
Yes.
Think about the story today. If we were like, oh, so what about baseball? And you're like, I never tried it. I was fast. I might have been pretty good. You never know, right? And so at least you tried it, and you're like, okay, yeah, not my jam. That's cool. Glad you guys do it, but not me.
Yeah. So that's the crazy thing, about sports. So with me in track, and our track program, like I said, it's already hard to convince a kid to run. So with the girls program this year, we haven't had a lot of girls run, but we want them there. We have the talent, walk in the hallway, in the band hall, in art, drum. I mean, we have them. Mm-hmm. So, but they're in athletics, so they predominantly play volleyball, basketball, track, not so much. Mm-hmm. So this year, our basketball team was doing so well, so I had the girls pretty much the beginning of the year because I like I said, our basketball team did amazing this year. They went to the state championship. So the coaches were already in basketball, and I no problem. I'll take it. They know I'll take track, period. So I convinced the girls walking through the hallways, because like I say, I do behaviors in our school. So I'm in the hallways, period. So a lot of these young ladies that were, walking the halls, I had to chase you down. I deal with a lot of that. So I was like, hey, let's do something with that time. Try track. So I put a sign up list outside my door, and that sign just was like, hey, we're gonna sign up. I'll sign up. So they started signing up, their friends. They started coming in twos. Mm-hmm. And when I got them to sign up at the first meeting, I said, hey, I know this is gonna be hard for you. You don't care for track, but just give me a 2-week trial period.
Yep.
Give me a 2-week trial period. No harm, no foul. So we got them in. We go to the first track meet of the year. They have them. They're having a great time. They're taking pictures. They're winning medals. So I get them to 2 weeks. Well, then after that, it played in right because we had spring break. So I got the 2 weeks. Then we got the spring break. By then, Mike, they were sold.
Yeah.
They enjoyed it so much. And then I even had kids that told me, Coach, I will never ever run track. We got them out there as well. So I gave them the 2-week grace period, no harm, no foul, because a lot of programs say, well, if you quit this program, then you got to run 5 miles for 5 days. But then that's already a threat.
That's right.
And I don't want that punishment. So I'm never going to try that sport. So, that 2-week trial period, okay, if you tried, we appreciate you, and you didn't like it. So thanks for coming out. You tried it.
Yeah.
But if you come out and you find something that you're good at, you get a team aspect, but an individual basis.
Yeah.
This is you. So, a lot of people don't get to be an individual basis at all.
Right.
They don't know that I can run the 800 or I can, play the tuba or I can play the drums or I can shoot the jump shot. But you get to find out something that you get to do, and it's you. Besides being put on relays.
I love that because, you're really speaking to the athlete experience with your sport. It reminds me a lot of, Tony Holler, who, there's always a big kind of divide whether you're a feed the cats or not feed the cats and all this stuff. And I don't care about that part. But one of the things that really struck me when we had Tony on the podcast was, his overall, everything that he does is all, and he's a chemistry teacher. So he's teacher first. His whole basis is make track the best part of every kid's day. Right. And that really struck with me. It's like, that does make a lot of sense. Your kids will be better just from that alone. But they'll walk away from after they graduate and maybe they go to college or not to do your sport. They'll walk away going, man, I liked track and field. That was fun. I had fun with coach and I got better. And that's how we make lifelong fans that go to track meets and become coaches and things like that. So I love your aspect of like, hey, 2 weeks. At 2 weeks, if you say it's not for you, cool. Appreciate you trying. Right. I still love you. Move on. We're good. So I like that. That's a good lesson there. So I love that you did that with baseball. So talk to me senior year. You're playing football. You're probably playing basketball. You're doing track. You're thinking about college. What are you thinking about college? How does college go? And where was coaching in your mind? Like, were you thinking about becoming a coach as you're a senior? Tell me more about that.
So, like I said, when you have so many motivational people around you, you get to thinking about that. So, our counselors are talking about us about college. Good. The subjects of like, what are you gonna, go to college for? What are you gonna study? Things of that nature. So, my grandpa was a coach, so I saw it firsthand. And my dad was my summer track coach. So I'm like, okay, look, hey, this is what I want to do. Did I know what it consists of? Behind the scenes, no, but I know what I saw, and that kind of gave me a blueprint of what I wanted to be, because I had so many great coaches and men in my life that showed me so many good things that I knew that at some point in time I inspired to be a coach. Now, what that falls down the line or what that'll take, I didn't know. Right. But I knew that I got with the counselor. We started talking about, kinesiology, and this is the field. So that I knew that's what I wanted to be.
So you didn't necessarily have a pinpoint of like, I'm going to be a football coach or I'm going to be a track coach or I'm going to start my own club, which, you're 18 years old, of course, that makes sense. But you're like, I want to coach. I don't know what that means. I see it. I don't know how to get there, I guess is really the way to say it, but that's where I want to go. And you had some great counselors and teachers and family. I love the, you didn't say your family was like, if you go to college, your family was like, so what are you going to study? Because you're going to college. I like that kind of that expectation.
Everybody, my grandmother, my grandfather, my mom, my aunt, they were all educators. Yeah. So the field was there. Yeah. It was destined.
That's cool.
It wasn't the way they presented it to me was like, this is what we're planning to do. It wasn't you're going to college. It was just like, we want to further our education. So it was on the plate, and we all. My brother, I have a younger brother and an older sister. We all knew that that's what we wanted to do because we saw it. It was not
a demand, and maybe a one step below an expectation of like, this is what you do. This is what you further your education. So let's talk about those steps. Yeah, it's cool. So where did you end up going and why?
So my story behind where I chose was. I call it the true blessing because I ran summer track in Giddings, Texas, with the track club LC Express, and I had previously talked to a coach. I was going to Neosho Junior College.
Shut up. That's in Kansas.
Yes.
Wait, shut up. Are you serious?
Yes, that's where I was going to. I was going to play basketball.
What year did you graduate high school?
97.
Okay. I don't know that you know this. I was the head coach of Neosho County in 2001 for track.
I did not know that.
Yeah, that's why I was like, shut up. I was like, are you pulling my leg?
So I had a friend that got a scholarship to go play basketball down. He was from Calvert, and we were really good friends. And we were just talking because we went to a sports camp at Texas A&M. It was a free sports camp, the NYSP National Youth Sports Program, and we were big in basketball. Yeah. And I loved it to death. And he told me that the coach, I can't call his name to this day, but the coach offered him a scholarship to come to Neosho to play basketball.
We were pretty decent, at least in 01. I remember this. Yeah.
And he told me that, they had a great basketball team. And I told him about you. And, if you want to come, let's talk to him. So I ended up talking to the coach. And he offered me to come down. And I was like, okay, great. So we had a verbal commit for me to come to Neosho Junior College. It's not like today's time where you take your visits and all those
things. No visits, buddy. Not
no visits.
Yeah.
It was just, phone calls. I talked to the coach, and, that was the verbal commit that, okay, we got a plan. Nobody else has talked to me about college. I'll definitely go there. And I get to play basketball too. So yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah.
So then that summer I ran summer track, and one day after practice, I have two of the guys that were in my district that were great quarter milers. They went to state as well. And we go to we take a trip to Prairie View. And I say, and they asked me if I wanted to ride. And I was like, yeah, I'll ride. So I called my mom and say, hey, Mom, we're going to Prairie View. I want to go up there and see the university and whatnot. And because they're going to meet the coaches. They had an official come up and see the campus and see what this, looks like. So we're sitting in the office, and Coach Clifton Gillett, he comes out. He's everybody's introducing themselves. So I kind of just fall to the back. I'm not there for this trip. I'm just riding.
Right.
And so he came up to me and he said, and what's your name, young man? I said, oh, I'm not here. I'm just riding with them. He said, that's not what I asked you. I asked you, what's your name, young man? And I said, oh, I'm Lewis Edmonson. He said, the 110 hurdler and 300 hurdler from Caldwell, Texas. And I go, yes, sir. He goes, son, I've been trying to get in touch with you forever.
Shut up.
And I was like, what? He was like, yes, sir.
Wow.
He said, we've been trying to offer you for a long time. And I was like,
no.
So I hadn't received anything, no mail, no phone calls, no nothing. Because, of course, at that time it was hard to get in touch with people.
For sure.
So I was like, wow. So he said, can you get your parents on the phone? I said, yes, sir. So I called my mom, and he talked to my mom, and I got offered right there on the spot.
No.
And I wasn't, that's why I say it was a true blessing, because if I had missed practice that day, I wasn't going. I wouldn't have been there.
Dude.
So that's how I got the Prairie View.
That is, I don't know, Lewis, necessarily where you are and your faith and faith walk, but like to me, that's like, oh, that's from where I am in my faith. Like that's God going, yeah, I know you need to go right along.
Yeah.
just go right. Just go.
Exactly how I feel about it. Yes,
dude,
sir.
That is, I got goosebumps, bro. Because, I think, again, we have perspective because we're at an age and stage where we can see what we did and how we did and the choices we made. And there's times in our lives where there are seemingly very small, like okay, am I going to ride or am I going to chill? We make that decision 1,000 times a day. And you chose this route. You went to the right instead of the left. And it births, that's the beginning of what becomes now. That is unbelievable. Like I can't imagine what, first of all, and I'm so blessed that I was the head coach at Neosho County in Chanute, Kansas, but man, it's a tough little town. Let me tell you.
Yeah.
There's nothing. I know you grew up in a small town. This is a small town. It's a rough place, man. Wow. That just blows my mind, Lewis. Seriously.
Sure.
Holy cow. And I love how humble you were, like in regards to like I can see the story told another way where, I rode along. And so as soon as we met the coach, I'm gonna make sure the coach knows who I am. You were just in the back, like, hey man, I'm not even supposed to be here, bro. You handle them. I'm just riding. I'll stay out your hair. We're good. And I love his response. Like, I didn't ask you that.
Yeah.
What's your name, son? Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Dude. So that's how you got to Prairie View A&M.
Yes, sir.
That blows my mind, man. I love that. Okay, so you go to Prairie View. What do you? That's just crazy to me. Holy cow! You go to Prairie View. What do you study, and how did track and field go? It's no football. Yes,
Yes, football.
football.
Yes, sir.
Oh my gosh, that wasn't the track coach. Or, hold on.
Yes, it's so it's a two-part story. So
Yeah. Keep going.
when I get to preview, so I'm studying kinesiology, health
Wow.
and human performance. That's what it was called on our campus.
Yep.
But it's still kinesiology,
Right.
same role.
Right.
So I'm running track, and my sophomore year,
Okay.
we're in summer workouts. And football was not our best sport at that point in time.
Sure.
We had a really we had a losing record, and
Mm-hmm.
but we were building. We had some different coaches that would come in. Some stuff that happened before I got there.
Yeah.
But my sophomore freshman summer going into my sophomore year, we're training, we're hitting the weights and whatnot. We're getting to the point where workouts are going good. And so we all worked out together. We call ourselves the track boys. So we're all together. We're working out in the evening and whatnot. So we get a call from Coach Gillard. He was like, "Hey, y'all, where y'all at?" And we were like, "We're in the weight room." He was like, "Come to my office." So it was like me and a few other guys that ran track and that played football in high school. And we still had that passion, a little burn for it.
Sure.
But we knew we came to run track. That's just what we were.
Yeah.
And so he called us in and he said, "Hey, I got a proposal for you that's going to be a 2-part deal." So our track coach, or the football coach, had got let go, and the time period that happened, they weren't in a rush to hire a new coach. They wanted, since the record was not where it needed to be, they wanted to seek out the best coach for the program.
Right.
So our head coach was the interim. Our head track coach was the interim.
Yep.
Head football coach. They appointed him.
Mm-hmm.
And had it not been him, we would never touch the football field. He was not going to allow that.
Right.
So he asked us if we wanted to play, and we were like, "Sure." Oh man, yeah, we want to play college football.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
So yes, I did get to play a full season my sophomore year of football, and it was amazing. It was something that, once you look at it, you look back on it, it was like, man, I played college football, and I didn't, and I got to, I worked my way up to being a starter as well, and it was mind blowing, just traveling to all these different states and playing football, man. It was, and I always put the spectrum on the situation, man, coming from little bitty Caldwell.
Yeah.
To here, and now I'm in Mississippi, I'm in Alabama, I'm in Jackson. I mean, it was just traveling like that was like to kick the year off. Before track even got there, before indoor even got there, I look back on that, man, that was a great time. I appreciated that so much.
I think because we're in it, we sometimes forget, air quotes, no one plays college sports. You know what I'm saying? Like, I know lots of people play college sports, but in the scope of, how many people are in America and the scope of how many people are in the world, college sports is a worldwide avenue, right? Very few people play college sports. So it's special. And by the way, so if you play a college sport, that's amazing. You're in a very, very small fraternity. You play more than one sport in college. That just got even smaller, by the way. What a cool experience, man.
Yes, sir.
That's really awesome. But I think I heard you only 1 year.
Yes, sir. Only 1 year.
Okay. Kept going with track.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So how is track going for you? If I remember right, because you probably try to rival me. Actually, no one rivals me on the amount of tweets a day. But if I remember correctly, did you end up winning a conference championship for hurdles?
I won a couple of them.
Yeah.
I went undefeated in conference in the 110 hurdles.
Nice.
And I would have went undefeated. Well, without the race, I can't say that. But prior to the accident I had, I was undefeated in the 60-meter hurdles as well, and conference champion. So 4 years outdoor, because I got my medical red shirt, and then 3 years indoor, I was the conference champion.
What if you don't, if it's okay to share, you said
Yeah.
accident. What happened?
So I end up having at the end of my sophomore year, I end up having a accident. It was a track accident that I was in with our track team. We were traveling to Arkansas Pine Bluff, and we had an accident, a rollover
Oh
accident. And
no.
yeah, we the 15 passenger van at that point in time was a it was a really top heavy vehicle, and it didn't take anything for it to to flip or anything. So unfortunately, that's
What
what happened to
what year was
happened.
that? Is that
This
90?
this was in 99, 2000.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so I would have read about this.
yes, sir.
So interesting. I told you I was the head coach at Neosho the 2001 year. That is the year I swore off driving 15 passenger van. I was like, I told our administration and I went to Ball State and Mississippi State after that. And I told all the administration, I was like, guys, these are not safe vehicles.
Yes, sir.
The way they're designed. And then, we were in Kansas, the wind. I remember coming home, I think it was from conference. We were at Kansas State. And I remember coming home, driving the van back to Neosho, back to Chanute, and the wind it moved me 10 feet over. And I remember my assistant coach, he was driving the one behind. He calls me and he goes, dude, are you falling asleep? It was at night. And I was like, no, bro, I'm wide awake. That wind just moved me. And I'm like, oh man, I was 1 foot away from disaster. And I got lives here,
Yes, sir.
buddy. I got lives. Yeah. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. So you got hurt in that. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Oh, dude.
Pretty. So the just a little layout. So the Saturday before, we run at U of H, and I run 783, I think. And I run the fastest time in the country at that point in time.
Wow. Seriously? Holy cow.
Yeah. And then the next week we had our accident. So it was kind of like after the accident, when it kind of happened and you kind of just, display everything that goes on. So when the actual accident happened, I was conscious, whatnot, at that point in time. And then I go and I check on friends and whatnot. And, at that point in time, it was just like a blur.
Mm-hmm.
So I sit down and I just get this pain in my neck. I'm like, okay, I'm a kid, whiplash, no big deal. So I lay down and I just remember a lady asking me if I needed any assistance. I was like, man, if you can give me a phone, that'd be great. So I called the only number that I knew, which was my brother's room at college. I told him, I said, hey, look, man, we've been in an accident, man. Call mom. I don't remember her number. Just call her and tell her I don't even know where we're at. So that's the last thing I remember. So then I wake up in the hospital.
Whoa.
I remember going, in the ambulance, and I get to the hospital. Of course they're doing their thing, and then I remember going in the room and they're looking at me, and then I don't remember X-rays being done, but obviously they were done because when I wake up, I'm still laying on this board, and I'm just like, I feel like my head is about to bust. I'm like, oh my God, I'm hurting so bad. Can you please get me off this board? Put me in the bed. And a nurse was in there, and they just kept coming in doing my feet, rolling, touching my feet. I'm like, why do y'all keep doing that? Like, what's going on? Like, and of course, they can't tell you anything. And, I'm still a kid. And I guess they wanted to wait for my parents. In my mind, I guess they're waiting on my parents. So that's why they're not telling me. So I'm not saying anything. So finally, I just lay there long enough and I just get frustrated. I'm like, dude, what is wrong? Like, why do y'all keep checking me? Like, what's going on? I'm fine. I got a little whiplash. Y'all got me strapped.
Yeah, that's still in your head.
Yeah. You got me strapped down in this bed. Like, what's going on? And like, Mike, I'm literally like strapped.
Oh,
here
man.
In the waist, in my thighs, and my legs.
So scary.
Like,
yeah.
I'm like, what's going on? Like, okay, let me get comfortable or something, while I'm laying here. So, Mike, I had my hands, they had my hands strapped here so I could move, from the elbow up. And the lady reached across and she was touching my shoulder to, make sure I still had, at that point in time, I didn't know what she was doing. But now that I look at it, it was like, see if I had feeling and whatnot.
Right.
Mike, she reached over and I grabbed her. I was like, lady, what are you doing? Like, what's wrong with me? And the lady started crying.
Oh,
And I say,
that's
what's
not good.
wrong?
Yeah,
What's
that's
wrong?
not
And
good. Yeah.
like, she started crying on me and she said, son, I'm not supposed to tell you this, but you have to be very, very still. I say, why? What's wrong with me? She says, son, I can get in a lot of trouble just for this, but you need to know, son, you've broken your neck. I say, what?
No.
What are you talking about? I'm moving. Like, what are you talking? She say, son, just lay here. Take my words. Be very, very still and let the doctors come in and work on you. I'm like, man, there's no way. She said, son, yes, you've broken your neck. Mike, it was like, you see those cartoons from Tom and Jerry back then where your spirit just leaves your body. That's all. That's how I felt, man. I was like, man, okay. Back in that day, broken neck, you're done. I'm like, everything, worst case possible, scenarios came to my mind. I'm like, I'm never going to be able to run track again. I'm never going to walk again. I'm going to be helpless. So I just kind of just later after that, Mike, I'm just in my mind, I'm just looking at the whole situation for what it is. And so that happened, and I'm laying there. And so then eventually time passed, but I'm just laying there. I don't know what time looks like, but then my parents get there. And so they had a procedure. I guess they were talking to my mom and dad, and they told them, yeah, go ahead and, do what you need to do until we get there. So mom's coming from Caldwell. We're right outside of Karnak. So they get there to the hospital, and my mom said she could hear me just yelling, hollering, just hurting so bad. So I had to have a procedure done at that point in time where they didn't want to go in and do surgery. So what happened to my neck was my C6 and my C7, they smashed. They smashed and they just pretty much cracked each other. So my C6 and my C7 just smashed. Of course, there's a space in your neck and your vertebrae and whatnot. So they're smashed onto each other. So they had a procedure that they were doing where they put these screws inside my head, and I would lay off the edge of a bed, and they would drop weights on this device. And what it would do is it would try to pull and stretch your neck, but they only did it like, I guess, hour by hour or whatnot, or I can't tell you exactly how it went, but that was the procedure that I was explaining to me. And I'm like, I can't believe I went through it. I'm like, that's old school medieval torture. Yeah. And I was yelling like that. And so when my mom got there and they heard me yelling like that, they were like, no, whatever. And the doctor was like, we have no other choice but to go in and do surgery now. So they fly in the best neurosurgeon in the country at that point in time. And I have his name, but I forget it. I have to get that to you. Sure. But he did my surgery, and it was amazing. I've had no.
Wow. Yeah, that's a good point.
So that goes back to sophomore year. That's why I didn't play football anymore, because
that makes sense.
Never have contact anymore. Like that, but that was
right. Yeah, so, Lewis, what's amazing is, if you would have told, if I hadn't known you were a senior and you told me the story, I'm like, oh, well, then you have to have some kind of stiffness. I mean, that's a major. I know you as this may come off the wrong way, but as a normal we hug, we dab. I seen you. Holy cow, dude.
Yep.
Unbelievable. I'm so grateful to know you and call you friend. I'm even more so grateful that you're here.
Yeah.
You were one step away, less than a step away from not being here. Mm-hmm. Oh my goodness.
And the crazy thing about and like I say, Prairie View was a whole blessing. Like, I mean, everything about Prairie View, I love it to death because it played out how it was supposed to be for my life. So that football year that I played football, we did like a lot of neck exercises, just strengthening the neck like crazy. It was mandatory. And that doctor stated that if I hadn't played football that year and got the neck strength with the muscles built up around my neck, I would have definitely been paralyzed.
Yep.
For sure. He said, there's no doubt. He said, everything, he told my mom that all the muscle tissue around your neck was the only thing that saved your neck from breaking completely.
Dude, I am blown away. That is amazing. Again, another one of those like, oh, do I play football? Do I not play football? Uh, wow. Now you said you won 4 conference titles.
Correct.
You did not compete that outdoor season.
No, not that
Yeah,
outdoor.
okay. Because at first I was like, dude, did you come back? Because you said 4. I was like, did you come back? But you said medical red shirts. I'm like, okay. So you had the rest of that year off. As you go into your junior year, and you're a 20, 21, 19-year-old kid at that time, and you could be forgiven of thinking you were invincible even after a very traumatic event. Any trepidation of going back? So indoor season starts, which means you've got to start traveling for me. Any trepidation, or did you like, hey, you know what? That's in the past. Let's keep moving forward.
And it was never that's the crazy thing about it, man. It was just more so, let's get back to the action.
Mm-hmm.
Let's get back to it. So my mind never ever really went there. Now that you asked that question, that's the first time I've ever been asked that. I didn't, man, nothing. I don't think anything was going to stop me from being back in track and field again. So It didn't matter, how we got there, what we did, what we rode. It didn't matter. I was ready to get back rocking and rolling, and it was like forever and a day already. With all the training and the rehab and watching and
right.
Because I remember distinctly getting back, after my surgery and going to the indoor, the outdoor championship. I'm sorry, the outdoor championship, and having to just watch that was the most. That was more excruciating than the rehab.
Yeah,
it was just like you gotta, you love the sport of track and field, period. But then when you got to watch the event that you run, somebody else wins it. It was just burning.
That's my title. Yeah.
It was burning to get back. So, and then of course that. Okay, the best thing about track and field in college is that we have indoor.
Yeah.
So track comes pretty quick. So I was so eager to get back to that. So like nothing really, mind wise and mentally, nothing really shook me.
I've been thinking more and more lately about that. You are me, I am, and you are where you are supposed to be right now. That doesn't mean you'll stay that way. Doesn't mean that that you're in a good situation necessarily either. But where you are meant to be is where you are today. And I wonder, because we have, we know that what happened. You end up going and recapturing your conference crown and kept going back. But I wonder if that time where you couldn't run and you had to watch someone else, your conference go off, if that wasn't needed at that point of like, oh, I need to double down with what I'm doing. When I get back on that track, I need to double down with my workouts and my health and my habits and things like that. I wonder if that was needed at that point,
Well, particularly at that point in time, Mike, the crazy, how you like you say, it was needed. I think it was because that's when I became a more invested track athlete because for some time, my freshman and sophomore year, and this is going to sound bad to all my track coaches out there, track athletes. It's going to sound bad because I was more concerned with just my conference. I was like, okay, I'm just going to win the SWAC. I never thought about NCAAs. I never looked at the times. I looked at the rankings, but I never looked at, okay, I'm going to go to NCs this year. That was never a goal.
Right.
Our goal and our rivals was so big in our conference that just
right.
win the conference, win your event, be dominant. We had this thing that we called it the dynasty. It was Southern University, TSU, Prairie View, and Jackson. At that point in time, we were arch rivals, and it was just like our minds were just centered on winning our conference, being dominant indoor and outdoor in our conference. So, if just to look back on things, I probably would have qualified for NCs.
Yeah,
I never cared or to even look or even say, Coach, did I qualify for NCs? Like, are we going? Like,
right.
So that's that year that I had my wreck. I sat down and I watched everything about track. I was just watching track. Then I started seeing NCs, and I was like, whoa, I'm running that.
Yeah. Why not? Right. Yeah,
I'm running those times. So when I got back, it was like, the goals were, indoor, outdoor, NCs, So it brought the more competitive edge of being. Coach Barbara Jacket used to say, she used to tell me all the time when we in the conference, I'd come back and I was like, Coach Jacket, I won the conference. And Coach, if you know Coach Jacket, like we know her at Prairie View, she was very nonchalant. She meant well, but she was very nonchalant with the things she said. And she would always say it in passing. And I was like, Coach Jacket, because she was so big in track and field. And I was like, Coach Jacket, man, I won the conference. She was like, okay, you keep on being a big fish in a little pond.
Oh.
I'd be like, what?
Oh, that's tough. Yeah.
And I was like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
So in 2001, we made it to the national championship in the 4x1, and she was serving as one of the big people on. I call it the big people.
Yeah, the committee or whatnot.
She was on the committee for NCs, and it was in Oregon.
Ooh, nice.
And we got there, and we got to work on. We were getting out there. We were getting ready to work on our 4x1 handoffs and whatnot. Yeah. And we walked up. We ran out to Coach Jacket. We were so happy to be there, and she was there. And so she's representing us. We're representing her. And we got out there, and she was so tough. I went to hug her, and she was like, "Wait a minute." And I was like, "Coach, man, give me a hug, man. We're here." She's like, "You finally got out of that pond, huh?"
Dude.
But I love her to death, man. God rest her soul, man. I learned so much from that lady, but it was just, life lessons like that. Like, man, it was so, I mean, the lessons were like, like, Mike, you couldn't have said it better. I am where I'm supposed to be.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah. Wow. That's so cool, man. What a fascinating story. Let's fast forward here just a little bit. So you graduate.
Yes, sir.
You graduate with exercise science, whatever it's called, health and human services or whatnot at Prairie View. So you want to coach. You got this degree. So what do? You finally graduated. You did a big thing. Graduating college is a big deal. What's next?
So immediately when I got out of college, so I kept running. We say we ran pros a little bit. I did that for about 6 years. But I worked in as I was running, I worked in mental health and mental retardation field, and that was excellent, man. Those life lessons I learned from that, were very, man, hard feeling, very hard feeling. It taught me to value life to the fullest, and it'll make sense here in a minute. But so then I get into education. I had a coach that was like, "Hey, man, I need a coach," and he was a really good friend of the family. He was like, "Hey, man, I want to bring you aboard," and I was like, "Okay, good deal." So I started coaching. This school was a 1A school in right outside of Austin, and it didn't have football, so it was basketball and track. So I coached basketball and track, and well, when I first got there, I was just working in behaviors. I was the ISS teacher, so I was just working with behaviors, whatnot. So I hadn't really got into coaching yet, and I was like, I just kept going in the gym, watching them practice, going in the gym, watching them practice. So the coach, we got out there and we did some pickup games and whatnot. And as I'm playing with the kids, I'm coaching them and telling them like, "Hey, man, talk a little trash to them, keep them competitive." I'm like, "Look, you better learn how to use that left hand, man, because that right hand, I'm gonna rip you if you keep going that." So the coach was like, "Hey, man, are you interested in coaching a little bit, man? I need an assistant." I'm like, "Sure, let's do it." So I jump into basketball, and then same thing happened in track. He found out that I knew my track and whatnot. So I fell into track, basketball and track, and that was kind of the beginning of that.
I'm always amazed at coaches who are really good at the sport itself, and because I'm always wondering, it's not, I like busting myths, right? And so one of the myths, and this is probably pretty close to where people don't actually believe this all the time, that just because you're a great athlete, you're going to become a great coach. That's not, because that means the inverse is true as well. It means if you were not a good athlete, you cannot become a good coach. So, and we've seen that 100, again, we're on episode 300 something. We've had many coaches here who were not even track athletes, and they became very, very good track coaches. So it's not true. And I've actually heard I saw it one time on social media where It's like it actually might be harder for a guy, a gal who was a really good athlete to coach because genetics reign supreme. So you had to have some genetic superiority towards your event or your sport, and so some things came a little more natural to you than the 114 to 18-year-old kids can not even walk and chew gum at the same time, right? And so
Right.
sometimes it's hard to understand, like, oh, you don't even, like, why don't you get this? It was just natural for me. Why don't you get this? So sometimes it's harder. How did
Mhm.
you, as you started coaching track, how did that process work for you? Was there did you understand, like, oh, okay, I'm working with Timmy and Tommy here, and they can't even tie their shoe, so I can't just expect them to run fast or even know how to sprint or even know how to, you see the kids with the arms and the legs at the same time.
Mhm.
Like, how did that frustrate you? Did you understand that, oh, these are individuals? How did that initial coaching year?
So that the first experience that I had with that, I've always been a person, just the way my mind works with track and field is just I've always been a person of fundamentals first. You're gonna have those talented kids.
Mm-hmm.
They're gonna walk the earth, period. But to get those kids that need that little extra, man, I was never afraid to put the extra work in and
Hmm.
go to extra drill or separate the groups and put them in a standpoint of like, okay, well, eventually we'll get there, but we need to work here first.
Right.
So I've always been a coach to push the components of, you have to repetitiously do these things. We're
Right.
going to take the time to do these. We need a little extra work. We need a little after school. We need a little before schools. So you
Mm-hmm.
have to put that work in. So that's something that I've always thrived on. And it's funny you say, like with the guys that are talented, and like I was in Rockdale and I had guys that were naturally fast.
Mm-hmm.
But when I broke them down and started doing skill work with them, they really couldn't do the skill work either.
Mm-hmm.
With the footwork and the high knee and the, step, drive knee, right
Right.
on, so they would go same leg, same arm. And I'm like,
Cracks me up.
no, this doesn't make sense. You're a superior athlete.
Right.
When I break you down and make you do fundamentally things the correct way, you have no clue what you're doing.
Right.
So, you know, some people get satisfied with the wins and the fast, but the camps that we go to, I've been blessed enough to go to the Texas A&M football camps and work those football camps when I was, when I was in Rockdale, and I had a chance to talk to those coaches, and the coaches like, look, man, we don't, we get guys here on this next level, we really don't want to teach that, you know. So you
Mm.
guys that are doing it in high school, we definitely appreciate, what you're doing, because those fundamental things, step, plant, drive off outside leg, drive inside, those things are components of. So I've always adapted to, I'm going to teach you this.
Right.
I'm going to teach you. We're going to repetitiously go over these things. We're going to do these things. So like, when we work out with my track team, we have a warm up that we do that I don't even have to discuss with my guys. They know that this is what we're going to do every day. One of the things that we definitely do is like our growing stretches. At first, it's like my guys like, nah, I ain't doing the 500, coach. That looks
Right.
nah.
Right.
But then they understood that how much I use those and how much I need those, because my growing is so detrimental. And if you hurt it, tweak it, or pull it, it's a done deal. So
Yep.
they make sure they do those things every day.
Right.
And like the fundamentals are very, very important. So I always make sure I focus on those.
So where does that come from? Because I don't know that, much like your kids, they didn't understand the fundamentals. Someone had to teach them that. So that means, perceivably so, that you had to be taught that. Where did
Right.
that come from? Was that dad back in the club? Was that college? Where did that, like, hey man, you can be fast and that's cool, but if you want to get faster, fundamentals, you have
Mhm.
got to ace the fundamentals. Where did that come from?
So we did a lot of fundamentals in my summer track,
Mm.
program with LC Express with our coaches. It was always, the warm up and warm up fundamentals. And then when I got to college, it was like, this is what we're gonna do. Period. Prairie View was one of those places that at that point in time when I got there. So the Prairie View you see now is not the Prairie View that we had. We didn't have all those trainers. We didn't have all those gadgets.
Right.
So we had to rely on the things that we needed to make us better, which was self-sufficient and fundamentals. We did those so repetitiously that we saw the results that
Right.
came from them. Like the funniest thing that I remember about, we talk about fundamentals when we're doing relays, your hand back, big palm,
Right.
no reaching thing. We had guys coming from Dallas who were some of the fastest guys I've ever been around in my whole life, had no clue how to come out of the blocks, had no clue how to, drive phase, finishing
Right.
phase, because they were all relay people.
Mm.
They never learned, how to run the curve, how to, get,
Right.
you're driving out, you're not popping straight up, how do I
Right.
had a guy, that, when I got to my grad assistant year, a sprinter from Dallas, he was like, Coach, how do I do these blocks? And you're in college.
Yeah.
He said, Coach, that's just not, we were relay people.
Is
And
that a byproduct? This is kind of a little bit of a tangent here, but is that a byproduct of the Texas high school system doubling up relay points? That's been I don't want to call it controversial, but a discussion. We every year we talk about this and the positives and the negatives. Is that a byproduct, a negative of the doubling points in Texas high school?
uh man, I think that the one thing I don't think you take the points away. That's just my theory on it. But I have seen a theory that says, we go ahead and we give the milers, their relay as well. Let's
Right.
let's implement that as well, so
Yeah.
everybody can, because you go to the state championship and you go, 4x1, 4x2, 4x4, you pretty much
Right, right. But what I'm wondering is that kid who didn't use blocks, was he always a relay guy? Because it's like, look, man, we need this. To your point, exactly. You win the 4x1, 4x2, 4x4. You're going to at least get a trophy if you don't win it. But is that the byproduct? Is that a negative byproduct of the Texas system where it's like, hey, Johnny, I know you might want to run an open 100, but man, you've got to run the second leg of the 4x1 every stinking meet because that's 20 points, not 10 point, you know?
mm-hmm.
And so then you get to college and it's like, man, I've never run an open. I hear this a lot where it's like kids don't get an opportunity to showcase their individual event for colleges
Right.
and stuff like that. And so there's the negative side of it, but I've heard the positive. I completely get the other side of it. It's like, wait, so you want to take away, we talk about team track as a team and you want to take away one of the most team oriented things there are, relays, the importance of it. You're not taking away the relay. So I get both sides to it, but I see there are byproducts, negative byproducts, maybe like this.
So my theory is with the way we run things at Hearne, and other coaches can comply with what we're saying because we discussed it so much. I have a natural to mind frame, and this is just me. I always say that when I speak to people, I say this is just me. So if I have kids on my team that are fast, that we can go in, we go 4x1, 4x2, 4x4, and let's just call it a day. Mm-hmm. But if we drop that stick in each one of those relays, season's over.
Yeah.
You never get an opportunity to display what you can do. So I say, hey, look, if you want to be on relays, you're probably going to only allowed to do 2, mm-hmm. But because I want you in the individual aspect.
Yeah.
And that gives you the opportunity. You're always an alternate. I can put you
right
where I want to after that, but I want you to have an event too. Now, like I say, some coaches might not agree with that.
Yeah.
But that's just me.
First of all, it's hard to say that Texas is limiting its sprint capacity in high school when you have a kid that just went 9.9 or 9.8 or where the heck you went. That's just crazy. So it's like, well, it seems like it's working. No one's complaining about the state champion 200-meter runner because they ran 24 seconds for the guys because all the fast guys were running the 4x2. No, sorry. No, it's still the fast guys and gals are still running fast.
Yes.
And 2, I still think about, and we've had this conversation several times, and I think it's important to continue to have, where people are talking about like the roster limits and stuff for Division I and all that kind of stuff. And the complaint is like, well, kids aren't going to be developed anymore. Like development is out the door. And I'm like, you know what? I don't think that's true. I kind of think of this Johnny kid who's only running second, or I shouldn't say only, but he's running second leg in the 4x1 and he doesn't get a chance to run the open. And so maybe air quotes, the big boy schools don't look at him because they don't have an individual time. And so he goes to Prairie View, whether he walks on or whether Prairie View goes, well, I've seen you run. I know you fast, so you at least get some scholarship. Mm-hmm. And then Prairie View, they got great coaches and they make this kid a 9.8, 9.9. So like just because you don't go to the Power 4 schools doesn't mean you don't run fast. And I can prove that because go look at the results. Go look at what it takes to win these conferences. Go look at, non-Power 4 kids who will be in the finals of the 100 and all this kind of stuff. So it kind of like I feel like it all works out because I believe there are amazing coaches on all levels. Like that could Johnny, this mythical Johnny could go to a Division II school and still run 9.9 or whatever, It's all the genetics. So it depends on what genetic is put in them first and foremost anyway. Yeah. So, okay, go back to high school. So where you have this, you start coaching the basketball and then track. It's your first years and you end up going to Rockdale and stuff like that. Where does today's Lewis start? And what I mean by that is, Are you right off the bat going to TTFCA and THSCA? Are you the coaching education seems pretty important to you. Education seems pretty important to you.
Yes, sir.
Right off the bat, are you doing those things, or did you grow into what I know and see today?
So if I fast forward to right after my first experience, then I got the call to in 2015, 2016. I got the call to go to Hearne to be the head coach in Hearne,
Okay.
The boys and girls, and I had coach. My AD was Chip Baker, and he was.
Wait, is that Chip Baker's the guy that I see? I don't know what he does, but I'm attracted to him because I think he does a lot of positive things for coaches.
Yes.
Is that Chip Baker?
Yes, Chip Baker, Success Chronicles. Yes, sir.
Yeah. I gotta meet that guy one year.
You got to. Hey,
I went to last year on the last day, and he'd already packed up, and I went to his booth, and I was like, oh, I missed it. I need to go the very first day. I need to go.
I gotta get you two guys together.
Yeah, for sure.
That'll be an awesome thing. For him to be on your show as well.
Yeah. So he was your AD. Oh, cool.
He was my athletic director. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
And he, just being around that guy, it sparks, man. He's so exciting about the things that he does, the way that he teaches them. He has the life lessons. Like I say, when you can see a person in a light outside of what they do, then you gravitate to them more because, I can see you being an excellent coach. I can see you motivating people. Yeah. But when you do this on a regular basis outside of, your job description per se, then that's when you get to see who people really are.
Right.
And I learned so much from him, coming in being, new to the whole coaching aspect. So, you take the whole, like you say, the coaching aspect was football, basketball, track.
Right.
Like, are you going to coaching school? Nah, I'm good. I had a long year. I'm fine. You know, I'm not going to coach school. I'm rest, our family, whatever you want to do in the summer. And then, he was like, Coach, you need to go, man. You need to go to coaching school. That networking will do you good. It will be amazing for you. You'll get to meet more people. You'll get to, the knowledge, the information. And his favorite word was go to coaching school and let people bounce ideas off you. I was like, what? He was like, now speaking about it, that's everything that happened.
Right.
Everything that happened. And like you say, like I said, well, fast forward, rewind, that's where it was. It started there, and then getting there, meeting people. When I first got there, I was just like the kind of guy that I'm just sitting there listening.
Is that right? So you did have to evolve into this.
I had to because it'll sound crazy to say, but I just felt like being in seeing the schools growing up, like, for me, it was like, the Westlakes, all of the Houston schools,
the big
all
boys.
of the Dallas schools, the big boys. I'm like, I'm here in Hearne, we just here,
Right.
So I'm just at that point in time, I'm just going here, going there. And I was really, it was myself and Coach Baker that actually ended up going at that point in time. So, we go do our own thing. He was the athletic director, so he was, doing different things for me.
Right.
And I'm just finding, I'm the new guy, so I'm looking in the book. What room 108, so I'm doing the new guy thing, and I'm making sure I'm hitting all avenues that I want to cover: football, basketball, and track. I'm at all the meetings.
Right.
And then you get to see, and at that point in time, I wasn't even going to the social events because I'm so busy. I'm learning.
Right.
New to this, I'm not missing a thing, So come back, and you get to see what those guys are doing, and you get to put it in your own way with your kids. Because I tell people all the time, what I do may not work for you, but I'm going to give you the information so you can do it and make it your own.
Right, exactly.
Your sprinting drills may work different from my kids.
Right.
My distance drills may be different for your kids.
Right.
I told Coach Adams from Refugio when he got to speak last year, I'm not going to say he was nervous, but he was kind of like, just a little bit. And I said, Coach, you have nothing to be nervous about, Coach. Look what you're doing in sports.
Right.
I say, man, I don't know. And coach, he called me. He was like, "Hey man, I just want you to look at my presentation."
Yeah, yeah.
I say, dude, I don't have to look at your presentation. I see the product.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
At regionals.
Yeah. Oh, okay. But you know what's interesting about that? I'm with you 100%. And I've had that experience. And honestly, that was some percentage of my motivation to start the Gill 1918 project. I was like, man, if you're nervous about standing in front of your peers, I get it. Start here. This is a pretty easy, like it helps you like write out a script. And, I saw you, I loved your picture you sent me, and you're writing your notes and like, okay, I want to keep things in order. So it helps you like start that. And then you can bridge that to, okay, let me speak at a clinic and things like that. But what's interesting, you said that where you're like, coach, you don't need to show me you're good. But yet you had that same mentality when you're like, I'm at Little Hearne. We're just here. You had the same mentality. You had to. That's why. And same. I was not. Now. You seen me. I'm on stage and doing all my crazy things and this and that kind of stuff. And I love it because I'm just. My motivation is I'm adding value to the guys and gals that are in the stands. But that wasn't day one for me. No. Way. I had to build up. Absolutely. I was like, I'm like, who am I? What am I? And now it's like, I have value to give. you know? And so it's interesting that you say that to him when you had the same mentality.
Because Mike, I promise you, still to this day, you can ask my coworker Destiny. To this day, I still won't get up on a stand, and I'll do this all day long.
Have you not spoke?
Never,
dude. That has to change.
Never,
bro. No, seriously.
I get it. But I've never done it. Ever.
Wait, Lewis, how do you reconcile this in your head? You're such a smart individual. You have no problem saying, "Hey, coach, you don't need to show me your stuff. You're good," but yet you won't. Hold on, now. This feels a little.
I know it sounds crazy.
It does.
It does. I accept it.
Okay, that's how you figured. I was like, I just accept it. That's the way it is.
I accept it.
Hey, we all need, I'm gonna call you a hype man in the sense, we all need that guy that's behind us going, hey man, I believe in you. I believe in you. You go.
That's me.
I don't believe in myself. Maybe necessarily.
And when coach when he got up there and he was setting up his presentation, I think he had a little, no, that was coach. No. So when he got there, I told him, I said, dude, I'll be the first one in the building when you're setting up. And he looked down and there I sat. I was ready to go, and like I told him, I said, the crazy thing about it is like, when you get to see your friends speak and you see what they do, man, I took every note and I told them to send me everything because there's something that you're going to get from everybody. I won't, if you compare and look at everything, I don't have the same athletes that, the North Shores, the Duncanfield, Cypress Springs. I don't have but what you're doing adds value. If with the information that you're passing on, it adds value to my program.
100%.
With the athletes that I have,
and
making them better. It's just something that I think the biggest thing about coaches speaking, and that's why I love what you're doing. And I've been passing it out there, man. You got to do this, man, because there's something we can learn from. I don't care how
100%.
good you get.
100%.
I don't care what level you're on, but there's something we can get from. And, a lot of people say, man, coach, you love track and field. And, I say, well, the one thing that I can't, and I've won medals at the state championship, but I've never stood on top of that podium and held that plaque and say that I'm a first, second, or third, champion in the state of Texas. But that doesn't kill my passion or purpose for anything that I do, because at the end of the day, we're still competitive. We're competitive. And Mike, I remember that feeling when I came home from the state championship and I was the second going in. I was the second fastest hurdler in the 200 hurdles, and I got fifth, but I made it there.
Yeah,
I made it there. You don't always get to push out your best performance, but you have to be okay with giving it all you have.
Dude, I feel like this is amazing to me, Lewis, because my picture of you in my head, you are this bigger than life guy. Like you're the party starter. And I mean that in all positive way. Like you're so encouraging. Like, of course you were the first guy in the building for that other coach, like that doesn't surprise me. I'd been surprised the other way. If you were like, yeah, I was sat in the back, like, really, what are you doing? Like, that doesn't surprise me. That you haven't, I feel like I need to make this a mission. I need to get you on stage in some form or fashion, dude. Yes. Because what you're saying, you say you haven't won, the team title and all that kind of stuff, but those coaches who win team titles, they're awesome. They're not better than the coaches who haven't.
Right.
You as a person is first and foremost are awesome. It's kind of like that. What I said, you correct the role and you praise the individual. The individual is still a 10 out of 10, man. You're still an awesome person, because we forget. And I think we do it. It's more so in track and field. I think we're bigger victims, self-victims of this. We forget that winning is hard. I'm not talking about little h-a-r-d, capital H, capital A, capital R, capital D. And I think we forget it in track because, there's, 20 some events for the boys, 20 some events for the girls, whatever. And so every meet we go to, there's a winner of the 100 and the winner of the mile and the winner of the discus, and maybe there's a team title winner. And we forget, like when those guys and gals that do lead their teams to win the state title in Texas or any state, that's hard. And there were so many things that, obviously they prepared and they did, all the things and all that stuff, but they still had to have luck. We forget how important luck. There's still things that were outside their control that had to go right for them. Right. So that doesn't make them a better person because the other person has one kid at the state meet. It just means that they did they had the better talents. So the genetic thing was there, which again is not under their control. They don't have anything to do with that. So,
you think about the logistics of everything. Like when you say, when like all coaches, are important and they do a great job, even if you don't make the state championship. But think about particularly the 100 this year. Think about the 100 and 6A this year. There's a coach out there,
just dumb.
That guy, 8th place with a 10-3, and nobody's going to talk about it. It has yet to be talked about, and he's an amazing coach.
You may go through your entire life and not coach a 10-3 kid.
Yeah.
And this guy gets 8th.
His coach and his athlete did an amazing thing, and nobody's going to talk about that 10-3.
And because, he gets 8th at 10-3, he can't control that guy in front of him ran 9-8 and the other guy ran 10-60. He can't do that. So that doesn't diminish what he did.
Correct.
And that doesn't diminish what the coach did, right? Any other year, I say any other year, but in most of the years that might win or be second or third or something like that.
Oh yeah.
No control over that. So
you might go to another state and the 10-3 will be a state champion.
Oh, by like a mile in some states. Sure. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
It's crazy.
It is crazy.
But I just feel, Mike, so I had developed a mindset that going to the state champ. First when I got into track, it's like, get to the state championship.
Sure.
Get to the state championship. Every coach wants to get to the state championship, no matter what your sport is. Get to the state championship. So then when I got to the state championship, it was like, okay. So then I've been there a couple times. I've got a couple medals out of it. Then I do some personal training. I've got some kids that they've been there, and then it's like my mind frame, and it's probably happened to some other coaches too, probably in their sport as well. Football and basketball. The first year that I did not make the state championship, Mike, I was probably one of the most depressed people around.
Oh yeah.
My mom, my wife was like, "Dude, what is wrong with you?" Mike, I thought the mission was incomplete. I thought I had failed my kids because we didn't make, and that's something that we need to talk about. I push that because I know there are other coaches out there that feel like that.
100%.
And kids, you can't coach it and you can't prepare kids if you don't prepare for what happens after regionals.
Yep.
You go to a region where like region 4 for us in 2A is hard, super hard to get out. You may run, I've done it. You may run a 40, 43. We went 43-2 this year, and we watched the state championship. And I had to prepare my kids like, you're not less than, man. They can't take away what you've done.
Right.
You're in one of the hardest regions. You're in one of the hardest states with some of the fastest kids in the nation, and you're one of them.
Yep.
So I think that's something that we need to, prepare as coaches. Well, there needs to be a seminar on that. What happens if you don't make the state championship?
That's right.
What happens if you lose the state championship? How do you cope? You cope to, walk the kids through that motion. And like, because we went to the state championship in basketball, and reluctantly we played amazing. We didn't get the win, but our kids, some kids were just so beat up that they were like, man, we should have won that. No, you competed.
Right.
You competed to the best of your ability. The coaches coach to their best of their ability.
Right.
We're still champions.
Yep.
What
you're talking about is kind of going back to correct the role and praise the identity. You're talking about our roles, and we're going to fail at our roles. You're a husband, you're a brother, you're a son, a teacher. There's a lot of different coach. There's a lot of different friend. You're a lot of different roles, and there are times you have a best friend, and uh, not knowing, I'd be willing to bet that you have failed as a friend, at least felt like you have failed as a friend
Mm-hmm.
in some form. You weren't there for your guy or whatever, just life happens, right?
Yes,
There's
sir.
times I'm married. There's times where I'm like, oh man, I'm not doing very hot in the husband category. I need to pick my game back up here.
Right.
That's your roles. Those are separate of your identity, who you are, who made you. That you are a 10, a 10. No matter how you fail, roles can fail, you're a
Mm-hmm.
10. So when we move our priorities incorrectly, and we move those roles to the top, it's like, oh man, coach is again, I'll say, no bigger fan and advocate of coaches. And I still think your role as a coach is maybe your fourth or fifth most important role. Your
Right.
husbandry, your son or daughter, those are roles that are way more important than
Right.
coaching. And yet sometimes, to what you're describing there, sometimes we put that coaching role number one. And so when we don't qualify for state, or when we don't win state or whatever, our kid gets eighth and runs 10:30, and we're like, oh, well, I failed. What terrible.
Mm-hmm.
Depression sets in. You're exactly right. And we have to remember, it's like, oh, no, bro, you're a 10. This didn't go well. That's cool. You get another shot, but you're still awesome. That's why
Yeah.
I work hard. Instead of saying like coach and stuff like that, I say, oh, the people who chose to be coaches. You're not
Correct.
coach first. You're Lewis first.
Right.
Coach is that's a role, and it's weird because it's one of only two, maybe three jobs, occupations that title goes with you, right? So like
Right.
your neighbors might call you coach, for crying out loud. I still
Yeah.
get called coach. I haven't coached in 20 years. Doctor is another one, right? You may have a neighbor and you're like, hey doc, how you doing?
Yeah.
And maybe pastor kind of goes with you as well, right? But I don't call my accountant, hey accountant Bob, how you doing?
Right.
It's
Right.
just
Right.
it's a weird thing with coaching and society, that we still, even though as high as it as a we put it on the pedestal of coaches, that it's still a role, and the person who is that role, that's more important no matter what happens in the job. Let's be real here. It's a job. And I know people are going to say, oh, it's a passion. Yep, sure. But it's a job, and I want you to get paid way
Yeah.
more than you're getting paid now. But it's still a job. The person, is way, way more important and way more valued than this role over here. So, but to your point though, Lewis, because you said we need to be talking about this. You're right. So why aren't you? Yeah, you see, you put yourself in a trap. You need to be speaking about this. You need to share this experience and these thoughts, and because you talk to a lot of coaches, so you hear these stories. You need to share that, so that 23-year-old first year coach in Texas who goes to TTFCA, and like you, is like, all right, I don't know what I'm doing here. I'm in little old whatever town, Canyon. I don't even know what small towns in Texas. I'm not even supposed to be here. And he goes, well, I'm gonna go listen to this presentation because it's the only one available. And he hears like, oh, wait a minute. So I thought I was supposed to do 24/7 coaching. Wait, this guy's telling me that, I've got a long career ahead of me, and that, what I do over here is way more important than what I do here, and to keep building.
Right.
I don't have to be depressed and things like that. That is important, Lewis, and you might be the right person to speak on that.
Yeah. It's something that you look back. We all get a chance to look back on things, and you get to, like at the end of the year, I always do a self surveillance. I mean, a self recollection on
Yeah.
of the year.
Yeah. Love that.
What could I have done different? Should I change this? Should I change that? And I think that's one thing that we need to do as coaches is too. We need to, put things in, on paper, and
Yeah.
critique yourself.
Agree.
Because every year we live and we learn.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
one thing that I've learned to accept, that we live and we learn. Because man, like I say, Mike, it got bad. Like
Yeah.
after the championship, I was like, okay, what do I do with myself now?
Right.
I don't even know what to do.
Right. Yeah.
My coaches that I work with say, well, those little people in your head are gonna get some rest now. So I mean,
That's
it
funny.
because
Yeah.
man, we in our season we run ourselves ragged, and
100%.
little people in my head, man, they go crazy.
100%. Well, Lewis, so by the time, listener, by the time you're hearing this episode, Lewis has dropped his Gill 1918 project. I encourage you to go back and look at that and listen to that. And Lewis, I'm going to encourage you, as you know, again, you're so intelligent, you have a lot of thoughts, and those little voices are talking to you, those people are talking to you in your head. Continue exploring that. And if there's other subjects like that you want to explore through the Gill 1918 project, please, put pen to paper and record those as well. You're
Sure.
always open to have episodes for that, because again, I think I'm 100% with you that people need to hear that. People can learn from you, just like people can learn from all you guys and gals that are listening. And so you're encouraged as well to create Gill 1918 projects. I was very, I initially thought about starting the Gill 1918 project as an X's and O's, because we don't talk about that here on the
Right.
Connections episodes. But then it very quickly was like, well, wait a minute, I want people to talk about recruiting and culture. And heck, I want somebody who does like really organized uniform distribution. Because, we got teams that are 100, 200 kids out there. I was like, well, there's a way to do that a little bit better. I was like, I want
Yeah.
that as a topic. And so I was like, oh, let's open this up instead of just being X's and O's. And that's why I started calling it the TED Talks of track and field podcast. Like, oh, there's much more, like
Yeah.
there's really no off topic on that. So I encourage you for that. Lewis, I want to spend the little bit of the rest of our time here, something that we were talking about during our pre-recording here. I almost called the podcast the Mythbusters podcast. And, one of the things that comes up in conversation in social, and if it's coming up in social, I know we like to make this distinction between social and like, at the track or
Yeah.
at the coffee shop conversations, but those conversations are tied together. What you're saying on social media, you are saying to other coaches and in your
Yeah.
network and stuff like that. So a conversation that comes up that I hear, and it's typically from like a club or a college coach, and and I understand where it's coming from. They're frustrated maybe with they go to a meet or a team in high school and they see that maybe the coach isn't to where they think they should be educationally. They're maybe they're not coaching the hurdles they want them to coach, or they think it should be coached, or the long jump or the triple jump and whatnot. And so, I've heard remarks of where they'll say, oh, that high school coach, there's just no excuse today with the easy access of coaching education. There's no excuse for a teacher who's a coach to not know how to coach XYZ event. You can go to all these great clinics, TTFCA, the THSCA. Gosh, I can go on YouTube right now and find plenty of things. There's Altus, there's USATF, there's USTFCA, million things in between that are going on there. And when I first heard that kind of statement, I was kind of like, yeah, it's true. You can go find how to coach anything nowadays, and coach it well. And then I'm reminded of like, oh, wait a minute, these coaches that are teachers that are in the schools, from school bell starts till school bell ends. And then for teachers who, grade work, like, oh, there's more going on here. You're doing so much other things. And, Lewis, you reminded me, I think of I think of teachers specifically, and partly because my wife is a long-term sub, so I see a little bit more firsthand. But there's guys like you. What I'm kind of getting at is, can you explain kind of like your average day? And you're a guy who goes above and beyond. You are at all the clinics, things like this. But you go through a lot in your role. And while you certainly identify as a track coach and a football coach, that actually is about this bit.
Right.
For you guys that aren't watching YouTube, like I'm very small gap between my fingers here. Maybe 5% of his day is actually the coaching, the thing that you want to do, being on the track with hurdlers or being on the field with receivers or whatnot. You have all this other stuff, really serious stuff, by the way, that you have to do, and that has to be your main focus first. Can you
Right.
talk us through kind of like, I don't necessarily want to say an average day, but help us understand why you aren't able to just watch YouTube all day on how to coach hurdlers and go fly to this clinic. There's other things that are
Yeah.
prioritized for you. Can you help us understand that a little bit more?
Yes, sir. So, just to touch on it a little bit, being an educator and coaches, if we talk about it, and a lot of coaches probably going to agree that, whatever your role is, you probably you probably don't get the time you prefer to get on. You would love to have. My role is I'm a teacher and a behavior interventionist on my campus at Hearne High. So, first and foremost, the behaviors are the most important thing. And when I say behaviors, that doesn't mean negative or bad. That means that that's if a kid is not in class, or a kid is talking in class, just interrupting the educational setting, or needs to be removed, or replaced or whatnot. Those are the things that I have to touch on before I ever even get in our school, before I say get to the athletic department. We don't even, I don't even get down there as much as I have, because I have so many other responsibilities that go on, especially if you look at, the teachers that are in tested subjects, that's time consuming. So, it's so detrimental that, those kids have to pass those testing scores. And you're the one that, you have to make sure that they're prepared for those tests, when it comes to the STAR test. So around that point in time, if you're a track coach, man, your preparation is through the roof.
Yeah.
And it's just, if you get into a situation where kids are not where they need to be, why are they not where they need to be? Mm-hmm. So that's more time implemented into your classroom. Then you come through and you're graded on a certain level as well too. When your principal comes through and do their observation, you have to be where you need to be in your classroom. You have to have classroom management. You have to have kids that are passing. You have to have kids that are ready to move to the next grade. And then if the senior year, then we need to do, why is this kid not prepared to graduate? What is he missing in your course? It's so many things that we as teachers, before we get to our coaching aspect, our coaching responsibilities. Right. Like me, I probably won't touch the athletic. I may get to touch my athletic period maybe twice a week, if that. Other than that, and it's after school, where somebody else may have athletics where they get to work on components, of blocks, hurdles, relays. Mm-hmm. And then after school, that's extra. Where some people don't get that, and that's not to say that we don't want to, or, it's time consuming. And then, you look at other schools where the kid's a baseball player, she's a softball player, and then she's still running track. She's playing tennis. He's playing golf. I mean, so you're not getting that time, right. Yes, the resources are there, but it's still a time component of everything that goes on that has to be put together, as well as the education. Coaches, when I was in Rockdale, Coach Miller, who I learned a great deal from, he said, man, buy your time, make sure these kids are equally at their best in every sport, but even better in their educational aspect. Right. But they still got homework to do, so they're there to eat supper and do education and come back and be able to do it all over again. So you have to buy your time, so it's a lot that goes on with education. It's just not about the resources,
Yeah, that's reminded me of, and I said it to you before, and I say it probably every podcast, where I say 99% of your kids, for the college guys and gals, I'll say 99% of your kids aren't going to go pro. And for the high school guys, I say, honestly, 99%, I think 7% of kids go to compete in the NCAA overall. So let's say 93% of your kids on average are not going to go on to college athletics, but 100% of them are going to go to college or trade school or straight in. And so that component has to be prioritized over track. In the perfect, I don't know if this would actually be the perfect world, but I'll say it that way because you'll understand my example here. In the perfect world, sure, you would always be on the track, and we wouldn't have to worry about English, and we wouldn't have to worry about discipline, and we wouldn't have to worry about stars and all that kind of stuff. We'd just be on there and doing our craft and having a good time because we enjoy it. But in reality, that may be gone senior year. Most of them aren't going to even do it after senior year. So, but they will be utilizing the skills of the leadership and the academics and discipline that's going on 97% of the time. It just amazes me. It's a little bit of, it's judgmental, first of all, when someone says, hey, Lewis, how come your kids don't know how to finish in the hurdles or whatever? That's not true. I'm just making up something. How come you haven't gone to a clinic or called this person? And it's like, dude, why are you judging me? First of all, because what is it? He without sin cast the first stone. It's like, so you're perfect. That's kind of what you're saying, by the way, is that you're perfect. So you can start pointing out what Lewis is doing wrong, which we know is not true. Every coach, from the Mouses, Pat Henrys, etc., Dennis Shavers, they all have things to improve upon, even at their age and stage of coaching, for crying out loud. So I just really push back on those. Thank God it's a small amount. It's not the majority of our coaching community.
Right.
I really push back of those guys and gals that are like, man, those high school coaches, why don't they do X? Why don't they do Y? And it's like, well, you must never have been a high school teacher, because no understanding of what's going on in their life. In track, we'd love for track to be the majority of their life. Guess what? It's this much, and
Oh
those
yeah,
other things are super super important.
yeah.
Yeah.
Because you get those kids that you want to talk to them about. I had one of my sprinters, man. She definitely could have went on and ran college in the next, on the next level. And you're prepared to go talk to the coaches, get her avenue, and then you come in and you have that conversation. It's like, Coach, I'm done with running.
Yeah.
I'm done. And then they go be a successful person in college,
Right.
get a
That
degree,
happens. Yeah.
and you're super stoked about it. And if you don't push them in the educational aspect just as well as you're pushing them in athletic standpoint, then it's
If
not
you're
fair.
in that example, I love that example. If you're upset or disappointed in that individual who decides I'm not going to do track, and yes, I understand I could probably go into college, but I want to go do X, Y, and Z. If you're disappointed in them or angry or whatever, that's an ego thing because that's about
Yeah.
you. That's you wanting that when
Yes.
she in this example is like, that's not what would make me happy. That'd make you happy. But
Yeah.
is this about me or you, teacher,
Right.
coach? So you got to be understanding that what your passions aren't the other people's passions. You're just a conduit for those who do have the same passions. Great. I hope you guys mesh up and work together in the path. But there are so many other avenues that are just as, and let's be real here. As we're all track fans, we love track and think it's extremely important, but it ain't the most important thing in the world. There's other, doctors I'll say are way more important
Right.
than track athlete, being a track athlete and stuff. So thanks for that, man. I just, one of the, I said we almost called the podcast the Mythbusters, but we very intentionally called it Connections because we wanted one to uplift and honor the guests that to join us here, but we wanted to kind of bridge the gap between these different we're one of the, I don't know if it's like this in other sports. Maybe you can, you're in other sports, you're in football and stuff. So maybe you can actually, I want to ask this of you. So in track, it feels like we are all in our own pot. We're under this track and field umbrella, but we have officials over here. We have high school coaches over here. We have club coaches over here. We have sprint coaches over here. We have like we're all in these. You may be in more than one pod, but we're all potted up, and it
Mm-hmm.
feels like it, I don't know if I want to say majority because it's probably not, but a decent number are either jealous or angry at the other pods. Like, oh, those officials, they screwed up, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, if you didn't have officials, you'd be hard to have a meet, by the way.
Right.
And all those sprint coaches, blah, blah. It's like, well, Mrs. Distance Coach, if we didn't have sprinters, we wouldn't have a full team. Like, we're all
Yeah.
under the same
Yeah.
umbrella. Do we have that in other, like in football? Do the offensive guys, I don't want to say make fun of, but are they angry at the defensive guys? And are the linemen mad at the DB? Like, is it like that? And we're all mad. Well, we're probably all mad at football referees. I assume that's the truth. Is it like that in football?
Not I haven't experienced it a whole lot. I mean, it's I've seen, because we spend so much time together in football, your day in, day out, weekends and whatnot as coaches and stuff. It's just like I just haven't experienced that in football.
Yeah.
Just cut it short. But it's because there's a lot of time consumed from early late summer, and what have you, if your season goes right till December.
But we have that in track.
Yeah.
And I'm actually putting a little bit of words because I'm actually saying, you are seeing that in track and field. That's what I see in track and field. So I'm not putting those words in your mouth. But we do that in track. We're together a lot, and we're, it's a long season. Gosh, some of us do it 365 as athletes and coaches. It just seems so. Anyway, what I was really getting at is that's what we wanted to do with the podcast, was to help bring that together. And that's what we're also really working hard on the Gill 1918 project. That's why, I've invited officials, like, hey, come on and do an episode of why coaches should be certified. We shouldn't be at each other's throats. We should be working together for the common good. And it seems like we don't necessarily work for the common good. We work for whatever our pod's good is. Yeah.
Yeah. It's what, just to speak on that, man, just to reference a little, togetherness. The only thing that I've seen in track that I wish, could be better is, and you probably heard about it too. It's like the trainers and the coaches. The outside.
When you say trainers, you're talking about the club coaches?
Well, yeah. Well, not even so much club coaches, just personal trainers.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Personal trainers and coaches and club coaches, because it's all going to come together.
Yeah.
Like even me, I have my own personal training company that I run, but it's a gravitated effort with the coach.
Yeah.
What they're doing in practice, communication.
Yeah.
Just, hey, look, I got a kid that's coming that wants to come over here. I'd love to have your blessing, but this is what we're doing. I'd love to know what you do during
Yeah.
practice, so we won't double dip, because at the end of the day, we want the kid to be at their best. I've had a lot of success with, me being a personal trainer outside of, my coaching at school, because I make the effort to communicate on a professional level, so there won't be any negative aspects, or so the kid, the parent, or the high school coach, because I never want a coach to feel like what he's doing is not enough,
Right.
or what he's doing is not good enough, per se, as people say. Because I had one coach that was like, look, I don't know what you know. I'm not afraid to say that, and I think sometimes we get egotistical about the things that we say, and we don't want to.
100%. That's the word. Yep.
It's just, it's okay. Coach Jones, my jump coach, she says it's okay to be good at what you're good at and be okay with that.
Yeah.
Because if I don't know, and I there's a better person,
right.
I don't have pride. Hey man, get it.
Yeah, that's the one that bugs me the most is, I'm gonna say club coaches, but club coaches and high school coaches, um and there's not a culprit. And what I mean by that is, it's not like, oh, all the club coaches, guys and gals, you need to check yourself. And it's not, oh, all the high school coaches, you guys and gals, you need to check yourself. It's a mixture of both. I've seen, what's interesting to me is, I think if I asked 100 coaches, track coaches, hey, do you do it for the kids? I think 100, maybe 99 would say, yeah, I do it for the kids. Like, what's best for the kids? And then they'll do something that it's not best for the kid. And it's like, well, wait a minute. I thought this was best for the kids. That's actually kind of my philosophy about the transfer portal and kids transferring. And again, I know the coaches, their jobs on the line for things like that. But I'm like, if it's best for that kid to transfer, didn't you get into it for the best for the kid? Maybe you're not the best for the kid.
Yeah,
and we internalize it. Yeah. And it's internal.
I look at it like that too, man. You get a kid that's in your program. If you don't get out, and if the kid is scared of work and he's on rep 4 or whatnot, he's never paid.
I think we use that as the boogeyman, though.
Yeah.
Meaning, I think that exists, but whatever thousands of kids are in the transfer portal right now, I seriously doubt a majority of them are running because they got mad at the coach because he yelled at them, or she made them do mile repeat, whatever. You know young people.
Yeah.
Oh man, I see young people every day, all day. I see what they're posting on social. I see how they act at track meets. I see the news, and I'm like, dude, the majority of young people are super solid, smart. Like, thank God we're good in the next 10, 20, 30 years when they become adults. Like, they're going to be great members of society. Now, we see on news and media and all that kind of, in our smartphones, and so therefore social media posts, we see the bad actions. Not bad people. They're good. They're sorry to disappoint you. People who do bad things are good people. They do bad things.
Yeah.
We see that and we go, oh, all kids are just bad. And it's like, bro, first of all, what a negative outlook in life.
Right.
But it's like, no, kids are good. And so I think the vast majority of those kids in the transfer portal, they're transferring for what, it doesn't matter. It's not my life. Whatever their reasons are. Maybe they want to get closer to home. Maybe they want to get paid more. We're paying athletes now, so maybe they want to get paid more. We just had, this week that we're recording here, Jackson Cantwell, Christian Cantwell's son, the number one. Have you heard about this? So Jackson, do you know who Christian Cantwell is, or was, I guess I should say?
No, remind me real quick.
Yeah, no worries. Christian Cantwell was a many time Olympic shot putter for us.
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry.
No, good. His son, Jackson, and I want to say Terry. Yeah, Terry Cantwell, who also was I think she went to Nebraska, big time stud, probably made Olympic teams in the shot put. I mean, they're just, you put those two together, you're like, God, let me see that kid. Genetics reign supreme, right? So Jackson is like 6'5". He's the number one. He's either the number one rated recruit for football, or he's the number one rated offensive lineman. Either way, I think he's the number one recruit. But he's also like a 70 something foot shot putter and probably 200-foot discus. So he's also, like, if he didn't play football, he would still be a full ride wherever he wants to go, right? So he finally makes his, of course he can choose any college in the world. So like came down to like Oregon, Georgia, Miami, Missouri, because that's where his dad went. I shouldn't say because that's where his dad went, but he's in Missouri and things like that. And so he just chose Miami. And a great coach. Corey Young's the throws coach there. Man, Corey's going to do a fantastic job with him when he does track. And it came out because this is the day and age we're in. He got a 2-year, $5 million a year each year deal. And so there's pushback. There's people like, oh, I can't believe. And it's like, what does it matter? First of all, this kid seems like one of the most respectful kids in the world.
Mm-hmm.
If you go to Jackson Cantwell's Twitter, I bet you close to 50% of his tweets are him gassing up his teammates.
Yeah.
They got another kid who's good. No, he's not 70 foot in the shot put, but yeah, he's like a 59 or 60 foot. Like he's super good. And most of when Jackson throws super far, most of his tweets are, and my teammate, Clayton, I think my teammate also threw 60. I'm so proud to be his team. And I'm like, bro, I'm throwing 70 feet and I got schools offering me 5 million. I ain't saying nothing about my teammates. It's all about me, baby. And this kid, he's still a kid, 17, 18-year-old kid.
Yeah.
He's gassing. And I'm like, what I'm getting at is, who cares about this? This is still a good kid.
Right.
Even all these things that, he's going to have a lot of money now and all this kind of stuff. He's still a good kid. It's not and I'm not saying that kid, I was going to use the Tennessee quarterback who went to UCLA as a bad example. That guy's probably a good kid. I don't know. But he got the brunt of the social media world of like, oh, this is what's wrong with college sports. And it's like, bro, he's going to be gone in 4 years. Are you still going to be a fan or not?
Well, that's the one thing about the portal that I don't understand is like, I don't think there's not one kid. Well, I haven't heard. I don't think there's not one kid or athlete that goes into the portal that people have anything positive to say about.
Right.
It's automatically a negative aspect.
Automatic.
You don't know anything about the kid, what behind the scenes is going on. His mom might have cancer and he wants to get closer to mom. I don't care if the dog is, but Amen. There's always a negative aspect behind the kid.
Because we judge. We're judgment first and foremost. Yep. Amen. It's crazy, man. I just wish more people, instead of pointing fingers, would realize, like, if I just worked on myself, we'd all be pretty good. And again, there's still going to be people who do bad things. I get that. But let's not just go into the assumption like, oh, every kid who's transferring, that coach was too hard on them. And so they're running. And it's like, no. And by the way, that is true, right? I'm certain there's some kids in the transfer portal that are like, man, coach was dogging me, and so I'm going to leave. Well, you know what? That kid needs to learn. Maybe they go to another school that they think the coach isn't going to dog them or whatever they call dogging, and they do, and it's like, oh crap, maybe I need to change. Like maybe that's what the kid needs. Remember, I think you are where you're supposed to be at that moment. So maybe that kid is supposed to be at another school and realize, crap, maybe I did have it pretty good over there. Well, I better learn.
Think about it, like some of the kids transfer and they end up right where they need to be.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
It happens. It really does happen.
The most important word you said in that sentence, we are still talking about kids.
Yeah.
We are still talking about 18 to 22-year-old. You're still a kid. I'm sorry. We're in the 40s, my friend. We're still making mistakes, right?
Yeah. And
maybe not you, Lewis, but I'm still making mistakes. Lewis, you and I, this is what I was excited about. You and I could riff on this stuff for a long, long time. But our time is up, my friend.
Okay.
Hey, this is fascinating. These kind of interviews are some of my favorite because almost like the first half today, we did what our charter is, if you will, uplift and honor, going through how you got to Prairie View and how you got to Prairie View. First of all, that was amazing. Your experience at Prairie View. I mean, that's just, again, unbelievable. I'm so happy that you're here, my friend. Oh my God. And then what you do as a high school coach for us. And again, you're such a leader for our coaches. It just, I'm so impressed and so proud of you for that. And then we get to talk about real world stuff that is going on today. And what's interesting to me is, I kind of realized, so we're recording this in 2025 and you're probably listening to this in 2025, but someone right now is listening to this in 2035. And so they get to hear your story, Lewis, and it's going to help them in 2035. And they're going to either maybe laugh at us for talking about the transfer portal because maybe it doesn't even exist in 2035, or they're going to be laughing like, man, they thought the transfer portal is bad. Well, the whatever they have in 2035, you guys would crumble what we have, So just a lot of evergreen material that I think will help people today and will continue to help people. And I'm proud to sit in the seat that I am, and I'm proud of individuals like you that sit down and are just so open and authentic and humble to share your journey, because I think that is what provides value to those who listen and who will be listening. So I'm just so grateful for you, my friend.
Sure.
And
Definitely.
so, yeah. Thank you, man. I'll see you. You'll be at THSCA.
Yes, sir. Yes,
You
sir.
will not be on stage,
No, sir.
but we're going to work towards that.
Deal.
That's all I can ask for. That's all I can ask for. I thought you would say no, so I'm happy. I win right there by you saying okay, deal. We'll work on it. Could be 10 years from now. You could be doing it in 2035, like I said, right? But we'll work on it. We'll work on it. That's
Yes,
good.
sir.
I appreciate that. I appreciate it. Well, hey, super excited and grateful for you for being here today. Very excited and grateful for you doing a Gill 1918 project. Please invite others. You did it, so others can do it, right? I appreciate that.
Yes,
And guys and gals, I am super glad that you guys were here today to listen to this journey as well. I'm just so pleased with the men and women that we have on the show. Everyone, whether they're their first year, and I want everybody to know. The people that I pick, first of all, the goal is to get everybody, but I only get 52 a year. That's why we did the Gill 1918. I can get you on the show that way, much easier. But the guys and gals that we invite to the show, it's a very it's not willy-nilly. I work hard at trying to find that coach who it's their first year coaching, their 40th year coaching. I try to find men. I try to find women. I try to find white. I try to find African-American. I try to find Hispanic. I try to find middle school, high school, college, pros, club, everything in between, because I think no matter where they are in their stage of their time, of their career, I think you can learn something from it. Because no matter where you are, you're exactly what I just described. You're in your first year, your 20th year, you're white, you're female, you're Hispanic, you're coaching club, you're coaching high school, you're listening to that right now. You can learn from these individuals. And I'm just so proud of the ones that say yes. Because it's not easy. This is 2 hours of work. And I ask you some questions. Lewis earlier said, I've never been asked that question before. I make you think. That's a skill set that I have as the interviewer. I'm going to make you think because it's going to help you. It helped Lewis to kind of work through that question, and it helps you listening. So I'm just so glad that you're here. We're going to keep doing this every Monday. We'll have the long form Gill Connections podcast where we bring men and women from around the country, around the world at times, to uplift and honor their journey. And then as you guys, because it's a by coaches for coaches podcast, as you guys create the Gill 1918 projects, we'll publish those. Right now we're on a streak. I'm so proud of you guys and gals that are doing these Gill 1918 projects. As long as we keep getting them, we'll keep publishing them. And maybe we're gonna have to skip a day or two because you don't provide the content, but I'm gonna keep not pressuring you. I'm gonna keep encouraging you. Your voice matters, and that's important to me. And we talked about that with Lewis as well. And that's why I'm gonna work for the next maybe 10 years to get Lewis on stage, because his voice matters, but I want you to participate as well. So thanks again for being here today. Join us tomorrow, hopefully, for the Gill 1918 project. And I just hope you have a blessed day, man. Because you deserve it. All right. We'll talk to you guys soon. Thanks, guys.